Welcome in, everybody. It is Wednesday night, another edition of the Joe Quill Show. I am that guy, Joe Quills, and a lot to talk about here tonight. Got some breaking news in the burglary cases that have been going around the country. Apparently, we know who some of the guys are. Uh, so we'll get into that here. We'll get into that. Um, we'll get into the college football playoff. They are talking about that now. They think they could be changed next for the fall. Report on Bobby Hull, which could lead to a whole. Um, who knows what it'll lead to with hockey players and everything with CTE and stuff like that. The salary cap rose is going to rise for the new NFL season. I'll tell you how much. And we have another game uh, Brazil this year coming up, but it's not the Eagles, thank God. We'll get into that as well. Uh, so um, Bank Boy, welcome in. We just started here. Started a little late tonight because I don't go head to head with the Bleacher Brothers show, even though I'm not on the Bleacher Brothers YouTube and all that. I, I tend to wait till they're done because um, I also moderate their Twitch, and we had another spammer today. Boom, goodbye. But, um, but yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Um, so I'm looking at different things with that, and you know, I don't want to go head to head. I have no problem starting out a few minutes late. That's why I tell you, even though I stream to the Into Bleachers YouTube, my Twitch, and the Bleacher Brothers X right now. That's why I tell you that the place you want to subscribe to one over the other is the Twitch account because you will get an alert on that right away. And if you have your phone on, which I usually don't because I'm usually working and I have to keep that silent because what are you doing there? You answering your own personal phone? Because customers can be a real pain in the ass. But yeah, or God forbid you have the manager's doing an observation, they hear your phone ring. It's like, why your phone ringing? Oh, it's the TV. Yeah, bull. But it's um it's I don't even know where I was going with this. So but that's just me and my ADD, ADHD, LMNOP that I have. But going to be um looking at a few different things here as well, and whatever I was talking about. Oh God. Oh yeah, the best way is on Twitch because if I can't get onto one platform or another, you're guaranteed that I'll be on Twitch unless something goofy happens to my Twitch account. So that's what I was telling you about. So nice save there, even though it took me like going from tangent to tangent to tangent to get back to where it was. Um, but we'll get to it here in a second. And you know, um, this well, we'll get to it here. So the one thing I noticed here, and I saw this within the last hour, and it came up on my phone, except I didn't have the phone nearby while I was moderating the Bleacher Brothers show on Twitch. Um, it came about an hour ago, and apparently it was a Chilean gang that may have had numerous cases of burglaries of athletes. So we may have we may have a break in this case. So maybe all this stuff will stop, and but the one thing is you can just have you get a lot of copycat stuff uh, in crime. So it wouldn't surprise me if somebody copycats them and starts doing their own thing. But it is a Chilean gang, and from what I was reading here, It's very sophisticated and makes you reconsider getting an isolated home as what it appears that Joe Burrow has. So, but um, now, according to the FBI, burglars who recently targeted famous athletes such as Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelsey, and Joe Burrow bounced from city to city using cars they rented with fake IDs. Oh, Trump's going to love that. Um, they ditched the cars as needed, along with burner phones they used to coordinate with each other. So, but they have a very, as you'll see here, it is a um, very sophisticated thing that they did. So it wasn't like it was, you know, some 16-year-old kid that wanted to break into Joe Burrow's house, and it was just like, let's do this. So they would hide in the woods while monitoring the patterns of security guards. Then break into the homes of wealthy athletes by breaking small windows or prying open sliding doors before converting jewel encrusted watches, designer bags, gold chains, and rings into cash, using loot launderers far from their victims. So this was an elaborate. I mean, this is just an elaborate scheme as I was expecting here. So, um, so we might have a break in this case here. Um, their booty had an estimated value of about $3 million taken from some of America's most best known athletes. And we even talked about one last night, the soccer player from LAFC. And probably the only reason why they targeted that guy was the fact that David Garrard, I think that's his name. Um, and if I got the name wrong, so be it, whatever. Um, he used to play in the English Premier League, and a lot of times these top players that play in Europe, they come to the MLS to end their career and help boost the team's recognition and stuff like that as well. Um, so, and the one thing is, and I've said it a few times. Um, you kind of have an idea when athletes are going to be out of town because some like baseball, their schedule comes out what middle of July for the next year, so about 10 months before the season starts, 8 to 10 months. Um, Football has been a little delayed now. They don't post until May, but that's more because the Super Bowl keeps getting later and later. Um, NBA has been late with their schedules the last couple of years because of the NBA tournament. But NHL, as soon as the season's over, as soon as somebody gets a Stanley Cup, here's the new schedule. Bam. So, but you kind of have an idea if you want to target a well-known athlete that has a lot of stuff. You can plan it out because, okay, well, this superstar is going to be on the West Coast for a week or two. We know we have a week-long window that we can do this, but we have to case the place out and stuff like that, which we will get into here in a second. Um, um, but the 7 Chilean burglars who targeted the star athletes over 3 months late last year also made some rookie mistakes. Bum, bum, bum. Um, Now, those rookie mistakes allowed law enforcement to eventually catch up, as detailed in a 20-page criminal investigation sheet released by the FBI earlier today. So, They left, yeah, but it seems like no matter what it is, no matter how smart you think you are, there's always something that catches you in the end. A camera or, you know, some of the things that they were doing here, which we'll get into here. Um, um, Now, the FBI lays out how the gang members were undone by allegedly posting photos for co conspirators to see via an iCloud site. Images obtained and released by the FBI showed three of the alleged burglars, along with an unidentified fourth man, posing with watches apparently stolen from the home of Milwaukee Bucks forward Bobby Portis Jr. Largely because those images, the men are in federal custody and were charged Tuesday with conspiracy to commit interstate transportation of stolen property, which could net them 10 years in prison. Now, this Chilean gang is known to travel throughout the United States and burglarize residences belonging to popular and well known professional athletes from the NFL, NBA, and NHL. The gang is responsible for stealing jewelry, expensive brand watches, US currency, and other high value merchandise. But also, it can't be big merchandise. You're not going to, at least I don't think you're going to steal a 90-inch TV, but who knows? Um, um, so the methods the gang involved dividing responsibilities for each member, such as renting vehicles, obtaining hotels or short stay rentals, acquiring fraudulent identification, and contacting fences or buyers of stolen merchandise. The FBI complaint states people closed in on a New York pawn shop allegedly connected to the ring earlier this month. So, even though we had that new case, we had somebody um, uh, get caught in the pawn shop. Now, the key to the burglar's success up to now has been an ability to monitor not only the victim's schedules, but also the activities of police investigators and security teams watching over the athletes' homes. Now, the FBI hasn't identified athletes by name on the complaint, but the dates and locations listed in the criminal complaint coincide with well publicized burglaries um, of Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelsey, Portis of Milwaukee, Joe Burrow in outside of Cincinnati. The complaint also lists two unidentified athletes, one from the Memphis Grizzlies and one from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So they're they knew what they were doing. They knew what they were doing. Mahomes and Kelsey were the first victims in early October during the Monday Night Football game against the Saints at Arrowhead. So that's interesting because that window was very short. Um, the unnamed Bucks player was targeted on October 21st during a game against the Ravens. Portis' home was struck November 2nd in Milwaukee during a game against the Cavaliers. I don't know if that was a home game or a road game. So, it's even more brazen that they do it when a player is playing a home game because that window is much shorter than in the case of Joe Burrow, who, um, let me find my spot here. I lost my spot. Um, Burrow's home in the Cincinnati area was burglarized during a December 9th game at the Cowboys. So he had probably about 48 to 72 hours that he was down in Texas when this occurred, even though they waited until apparently the day of the game. Um, the unnamed Grizzly players was hit December 19th during a December 19th home game against Golden State. Now, they know what they're doing. and they'll zip in and they'll zip right out like they're taking over Wisconsin. You know, if you know that movie, that's from Stripes. Um, so so they had a January 30 federal complaint in Florida. Um, the agent whose name was blacked out on the affidavit ascribes high levels of sophistication to the seven defendants for the way they identified their targets. They found vulnerabilities in home security systems and figured out how to convert the high value loot into cash through fences, as they call them. The men allegedly used fake IDs, multiple rental cars, and burner phones to keep the phones from being tracked as they traveled across the country between burglaries. Um, at the same time, the agent identified a series of blunders that helped law enforcement identify the culprits and, crucially, connect them directly to many of the stolen items. Um, Mistakes included a series of selfies that the alleged burglars, according to complaint, apparently shared with others as if to advertise their exploits. The problem was they uploaded the photos to a secure Apple iCloud account that the FBI was able to access with a search warrant. So, and you know what may be the case here? Now, if they had a burner iPhone, maybe it's because of the fact that when you take a picture, it automatically goes to the iCloud. At least I think it does. At least my phone does. Um, so apparently, the burglary at Portis's home, the gang members broke open a safe containing several watches, chains, personal items, jewelry, and cash. They also stole a Louis Vuitton suitcase and designer bags. Um, um, so, and they only identified Portis as athlete four. So yeah, they had to do some work on this article to pinpoint who it is and went from there. Um, so the FBI complaint in reference to the November 2nd burglary included a color selfie photo of four men, one wearing a Chiefs jersey, inside what appears to be a hotel room. On the floor is a broken open safe, along with an array of 8 watches, plus a bejeweled watch that one of the suspects, the selfie photographer, is wearing. I love reading how stupid some people are. I really do. But then again, I'm sure even the most accomplished burglar or whoever does make a mistake every now and then. Now, that same burglary on November 2nd also was notable for the security camera video that Portis posted online showing two men at the house's front door with their heads and face covered. They hesitate while one speaks on a cell phone. Then he says to the other in Spanish, "Go for it." The second one kneels and uses a power tool on a panel near the base of the door. So, um, So on February 5th, a federal grand jury in Ohio indicted three men in connection with the November 2nd burglary. The individuals seem to be the alleged tip of the iceberg in a string of crimes the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of Ohio stated. So there may even be more that hasn't even made the news. Who knows? Um, Now, the Burrow case is interesting because now they stole items valued at up to $300,000. Some of those items were identified recently at a New York City pawn shop. Both the shop owner and employee had been charged with conspiring to receive stolen property. Um, but here's where um, some of the guys screwed up. Um, In late January, some of the suspects were halted in their Florida rental car by police on an Ohio highway. Body cam video shows the Ohio Highway Patrol showed one of the men wearing a Bengals stocking cap. I'm guessing that may be Joe Burrows. The men did not speak English, so when an officer asked them in Spanish where they were headed, they said Orlando, but they weren't going to Orlando. The officer responded, "Wrong direction." The person in the back seat then changed his destination to New York and then back to Florida. During a search of the car, an officer found a pouch hidden behind the glove box, and inside were two tools that another officer later identified as window punches. They also found a yellow crowbar. But this story is fascinating to me because you get to see that even if they are the most accomplished burglars and robbers and all that, they still screw up. Um, and they were shortly arrested thereafter. So here's the interesting thing with Joe Burrow, because he's got a secluded house from what I had seen. He had employed a security team to patrol his home while the Bengals were in Texas, and I think he had a clue that something was going on. But the complaint described the burglars as having tracked not only the athlete's movements, but also of his home security team. The defendants allegedly monitored the times when shift changes occurred and when the security personnel would move between the back and the front of the home. Um, the complaint describes the burglars as being bold enough to stealthily enter the back of the house without breaking any windows while the security detail was standing in the driveway. Defendants allegedly monitored the detail's movements from a wooded area where no security cameras were located. And yeah, I told you before, um, because I had the noisy neighbor upstairs. Um, the 22-year-old me, the 17-year-old me had an idea, even though I'm well over 22. I had an idea of, well, it's snowing. Let me throw a snowball up to their window. But before I even grab the snow, I'm like, no, dumbass, you can't do that. Because one, you'll hurt your shoulder and elbow. That's the first thing. Two, there's numerous cameras on this side of the building. And I don't know how far that they go out. So I have a street that dead ends right here. So the further I go, the chances of me getting that third floor window is less and less because I got to throw it harder and higher and faster and all that and hope it doesn't. Because knowing my luck, I hit my window instead of their window upstairs. And I got to explain why I have a broken window. So sometimes, even though you have flashes that you're 20, you have a flashback of when you were 22, 17 years old, or whatever, in the snowball fight era of your life, you realize that, no, I can't do that anymore. Come on, Joe. But, you know, if there wasn't so many cameras around, maybe I could have done it, but, I'm not taking a chance with all the cameras there because knowing my luck, you know, management and maybe even police with them at like 8:30 in the morning, banging on the door when I'm still sleeping till like 10. But you know, they but these guys here, they were pretty sophisticated. They knew exactly where they had to hide in the woods and all that. Um, so the FBI describes using a number of high-tech tactics to zero in on the alleged burglars, including license plate reader data from local police at various locations on the defendant's routes. They also use cell phone tower data to co-locate one or more defendants' phones with their rental vehicles. The same rental vehicle was identified as having been in Cincinnati and Jeffersonville, Indiana, before being abandoned at a McDonald's in Miami. So, and they mention all 7 names here. I'm not going to get into the names, um, but the 3 names, the last 3 names I mentioned are all identified in selfie photos released with the complaint and were named in the February 5th indictment. I think we're going to see a lot more of this coming up in the next few weeks and months. I think eventually we're going to find out if all these things are interconnected or not. It sounds like they are with the way that they're describing everything. So, um, but yeah, I mean, I would say one thing. I don't care. I don't care how protected even my apartment building is. You could still get in. You could still get into my apartment. I just think that, you know, I mean, it does seem like Fort Knox because you have a locked door here, a locked door down the other end of the building, another one over there, the front door, which is you have to get buzzed in. But there's like 5 or 6 different doors that are all locked. But somebody could still get in. You know, you you buzz somebody in, then somebody sneaks in behind them. Uh, but things like that happen. Um, but they're not going to get much from me, trust me. But you can get a lot of things um, from these athletes, and it's really, I mean, it's really interesting everything that they did, but I don't know. It looks like all these things are connected or interconnected, and it looks like that they got 3 of the guys so far, and apparently there's 4 more that they're going to get, and hopefully they do get them because um, it's more than just it's more than even though they lost a lot of valuable items, you know, there's much more precious things than a piece of jewelry or anything like that. A human life's much more. Um, but they knew that they knew what they were doing, and a couple of them got caught. So, um, but this is a fascinating story, and probably end up being a movie, a 30 for 30, or God knows what else. But interesting thing there, just to say the least. So, um, just checking one thing here as the scroll comes back around here. Okay, so it looks like that there will be changes in the college football playoff, whether it's next season or 26. It's definitely going to happen in 26, but in 25 we have to see. Um, but following a joint meeting between athletic directors representing their conferences on Wednesday, SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey and Big Ten Commissioner Tony Petitti said they agreed that the way teams are seeded in 12-team college football playoff should change this fall. I mean, now granted, I want to see one more year. When you have a new format, changing after one year, usually, after one year, it's like, okay, well, give it one more year. Kind of like the Major League Baseball playoffs. Well, this year, you had 2 teams that did not play in the wild card round in the World Series. So, and like I said, you know, sometimes you'll have a course correction. Now, the way that they did the seedings this year, and I'm guessing when they first came up with this plan for 12 teams, you had a Power 5 conferences, not Power 4. So their plan was, or what they were probably thinking was, we're probably going to get the Big E, the Big 10, Big 12, SEC. We're going to have top 5 teams in those 4 slots for conference champions. So with 5 conferences, that fifth one, we'll see where he lands. But I think that they planned that with 5 conferences, it was a very good chance that those 4 teams that would finish 1 through 4 would be top 5 or top 10. But because the way college football was this year, you had Boise State who got up to the 3 seed because they were the third conference winner in the standing and uh, the poll. I'll call it the poll. The committee. The committee ranked them third, the third conference winner. Arizona State got ranked 4. Arizona State almost won, but I think the first round went as well as you would have expected when you came up with this plan because you had 4 teams. You had home field advantage for 4 teams, and all 4 of them won. Now, granted, Penn State had a huge advantage over SMU because of the fact that it was so cold. Um, Ohio State, they ended up winning the whole thing. Notre Dame and Indiana was like a deer in headlights, and Clemson probably wouldn't have been in if they didn't win the conference. So, um, but yeah, but once that first round was over, you had what a lot of people said were unworthy teams that got the bye, and they all got beat in the first round or in that quarterfinal round. Now, if they now let's say Oregon didn't end up playing Ohio State, could they have advanced? Maybe. If at least 2 of those 4 teams that had a first round bye had won, would we be talking about this right now? Probably so, but not to the extreme that this is looking like they are right now. I just think that, you know, it may be a bit of an overreaction, but I think also when they came up with this idea, they didn't plan on the 4 championship winners to be, or the 4 conference winners that got the bye. Now, Oregon was number 1 overall. And you know what? They met the wrong team at the wrong time and also a team that they played in the regular season, actually in their own conference. So, nothing you could do about that. That stuff happens, but not the way that they got blown out. Um, Arizona State, they had a dogfight with Texas. They just ended up losing. Um, Boise State lost to Penn State. Penn State was in command most of that game. Um, and who was the fourth one? Oh yeah, Georgia. Georgia lost, but that Georgia loss kind of has an asterisk to it because their star quarterback got hurt at the end of the first half. Now, granted, you could say, well, some schools have a second quarterback that can just go in there and play. Well, even if you are a kid that can play and you think you are a number 1 starter, well, guess what? You didn't prepare with the game plan as much as the number 1 starter did. Because number 1 gets most of the snaps during the week. All of a sudden, you're in the game. Just like EA Sports. If it's in the game, it's in the game. But, I could talk to him blue in the face and say, I'll give it another year. But you know what? Those guys, Petiti and Sankey, they don't care what a hack streamer is talking about here. Yes, they don't care what a hack podcaster talks about. And you know what? Even if you change things up and you just do it 1 through 12 and you make sure that 5 of those teams are conference winners, are guaranteed conference winners. And the reason why I say guaranteed is you never know. You might have, the way that this is working out, and, every year is different. You may have in that top 12, you never know. You could have 7 conference winners, even though a lot of times and here's the thing with eye tests as well. If you see the Big 12 champion and you see the Sun Belt champion, that Big 12 champion's going to get it 99 times out of 100. Unless the Sun Belt champion has an impressive resume where they defeated an SEC school and, something like that. So you're going to have that. You're going to have some years where you may have that 15, that fifth conference winner being so far down that's like, man, what do we do? Or you may have a year like they had thought originally where the top 5 teams or the 5 conference winners would be 1, 2, 3, 6, and 12. Well, guess what? 1, 2, 3, 6 are now 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what I think that they were thinking. It's just that stuff happens, and I think that you've actually created a monster where, teams are playing harder and harder now to get that playoff bid because they know if you're one of the Power Four conference winners, you get in no matter what. Or at least you should get in. But um, but it's important to note any changes for the 2025 season has to be unanimously agreed upon by the 10 FBS commissioners and Notre Dame athletic director Pete Babakwa. So I'm not sure if he's ready to Kurt Babakwa, who was on the 1984 San Diego Padres team. Now there's a pull out of my ass, Kurt Babakwa. But um, so Sankey said, Greg Sankey, I'm prepared to vote for seating change, but it has to be unanimous. No shit. Now in 26, it doesn't have to be because it's a new contract, but these are the rules that they have with this contract that ends after the 25 season. Um, and as I said, the top 4 ranked conference champions got a bye. It was one of the most controversial facets of the format because it allowed ninth-ranked Boise State, which won the Mountain West, to earn a 3 seed, and 12th-ranked Arizona State to earn a 4. But Arizona State put up the biggest fight. I don't think you can complain about Georgia getting a 2 seed. You can't complain about Oregon getting a 1 seed. What happened to Oregon? Sometimes you just have that day where it's like, God damn. But Penn State and Texas, Texas was 3rd, Penn State was 4th in the final rankings. They were runner-ups in their respective conferences, but they couldn't be seeded higher than 5 or 6. But they also got a home game. So one thing that they are a popular suggestion to change the seating for this fall, which Petiti said he favored, has been to use the selection committee's ranking for the seedings while making room for the 5 highest conference champions. In that model, the committee's top 4 teams would earn the top 4 seeds and buys, regardless if they were conference champions. So if that were to come to play, and that would be approved by all 11 big muckety mucks, that would open the door for Notre Dame to get a first round bye, even though Notre Dame is okay with being an independent because, we just need to get in. We're okay because, we get an extra home game, we get extra money for it. The SEC and Big Ten have a bulk of control of what the CFP will look like when the new contract at ESPN begins following the 25 season. Sankey declined to get into specifics when asked directly about the respective conferences would like the playoff to look like. That's something our colleagues, we owe our colleagues first. I think we've been consistent in that observation. Um, Now, there's reports that they may go to 14 teams in 26. I say 16 because you go with the conference winners, and you go with the rest with 9 and 7, I think it is, or 10 and 6. Um, um, Big Ten seems aligned in their desire for more automatic qualifiers. A popular model includes 4 guaranteed teams from each of the Big Ten and SEC, 2 teams from the Big 12 and ACC, and 1 spot for the highest ranked Group of 5 champion, and 1 at-large spot, which could go to Notre Dame. So basically, it's going to be David versus 11 Goliaths. Um, but Sankey said the 2026 season is a pretty small part of the agenda for next week's meeting in Dallas, during which much of the time is expected to focus on 2025. So it looks like they may change it. The only problem is they need to get a unanimous vote. Now, I don't know if it's like we just vote once and that's it, or you say, "Oh, I want to vote again," or it's like the Democratic and Republican national committees, where if you don't get the electoral, the votes to win the nomination, you have to start over again. I don't know, but um, you could see a lot of different things that are going to happen, and if they want to, if they want to do it where the top 4 teams, no matter who the conference is, or if they're a conference winner or an at large, go right ahead. I don't give a shit. But you know, I mean, I understand why that they did it. It's just that it just came up. You playing for something, and then you also had the Pac-12 folding for the most part. Everybody left the conference, so I don't know what else you can do. But if they want to change it, go right ahead. I don't care. But I understood why they did it. It's just that things didn't work out the way they planned. So now I did see this today, and it was interesting because, well, first of all, it was 2 years after the fact. Um, but I'm not surprised with this because hockey players do take a ton of hits to the head. And also with hockey, you know, it wasn't that long ago that nobody wore helmets. And if you wore helmets, you were a wuss. Just use another word for that. Begins with a P and ends in Y. But um, so Bobby Hull had CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, when he died 2 years ago. His widow, in a statement released on Wednesday. Um, and the thing is, and we know how hockey players are. You know, you get a puck in the face, I'll just stitch it up and I'll be back out there. Or, all the different things. You know, I still have a heartbeat. I'm going back out there. Matter of fact, um, AJ's interview with one of the FAU hockey club guys. I forgot the name because I wasn't thinking I was going to talk about this. He said on the show, because he has a wrist injury right now. He said, "Well, if it's yeah, obviously I can't play in the conference tournament, but I guarantee if we reach nationals, I'm playing." That's what he said, and and that's the way of hockey players. I mean, my God, if you know, let's say your let's say your favorite NHL team, and you follow them even after the fact. Like, let's say somehow the Flyers got the Stanley Cup final, whether it's 5 years from now or next year, next season, whatever it is. You find out the day or two, or actually you find it even anytime during the playoffs. You find out, oh, this guy played with a broken leg. This guy had a broken foot. This guy had this injury. This person had this injury, and they're playing through it. Um, you have all these injuries, and they still hit the ice, play. I mean, you got to be pretty much incapable of moving to play. And I think one of the Florida Panthers, when they lost to Vegas, he played in the games, but he was so messed up from injuries that a couple of his teammates had to lace his skates up or whatever he had to do. So, um, so researchers at the Boston University CTE Center found that Hall had stage 2 CTE when he died in 2023. He was 84 years old. Um, but yeah, I imagine he had. Um, I'm imagining that he had a major. I'm sure he got hit in the head numerous times in hockey. And even the padding that you would have for shoulder pads, elbow pads, stuff like that, they were archaic to what is now. And even then you still get hurt. But you have the glass that you're crashing into all the time and all that. So he probably had concussion on top of concussion on top of concussion over his career, and I'm sure, I mean, I had a concussion or two. I'm sure if they really wanted to examine my brain, I wouldn't be surprised if I had it if I passed, um, not to the extreme that um, many football players do, or even um, Bobby Hull did. Now, Hull struggled with short-term memory loss and impaired judgment over the final decade of his life. He chose to donate his brain after seeing former teammate and fellow Hall of Famer Stan Mikita, who died in 2018, decline late in life. So, um, his wife, Bobby Hull's wife, Deborah, said, seeing the pain and heartache suffered by his lifetime friend Stan Mikita's family, Bobby felt strongly no other family should have to endure CTE. He insisted on donating his brain, feeling as though it was his duty to help advance research on this agonizing disease. And what's most agonizing is, even though you know you have it, mm, 1 second. There we go. There we go. Somebody um, decide to spam the chat room, and since I'm monitoring that as well tonight, boom, you're gone. But um, uh, Deborah said that Bobby insisted on donating his brain, feeling as though it was his duty to help advance research of the agonizing disease. Um, Now, it's interesting that the NHL Players Association announced in November it was forming an advisory committee to help hockey players better understand CTE and the damage that concussions can do to the brain. In December, researchers at Boston University published a study of deceased male hockey players that showed 18 of 19 NHL players examined had CTE. It also found the odds of developing CTE increased by 34% each year of hockey played. Now, CTE has been identified in athletes and military combat veterans who sustain concussions on repeated blows to the head. It can be diagnosed only posthumously through an examination of the brain. And who knows, maybe in 10, 20 years, maybe after I'm gone, they can find out CTE other ways of diagnosing CTE and find ways of helping out with research and whatever. Um, but yeah, I mean, you know, a lot of the, I mean, the last player that never wore a helmet was Craig McTavish, and he played for a couple years with the Flyers, I believe. Um, you have guys that never wore a helmet up until the 80s, and little by little, and then after a while, you had to wear a shield and a shield of a certain length and all that. So, and I'm sure even hockey goalies are probably susceptible as well because if I remember Mike Richter, the New York Rangers goalie, Rangers legend, whereas a Phillies legend is a joke, a Rangers legend, even though they've only won one cup since 1940, um, you know, you you respect greatness, and Mike Richter was one of the great goalies of his time. Um, but Mike Richter had to retire because of concussions from pucks hitting him in the head. You know, and you know, I don't know if there, I don't know if there's advances with helmets in hockey. I don't know if that's the case, and also you got to remember sometimes you have a freak accident where you hit your head on the ice. That's happened from time to time. Um, you hit your head on the boards and all that, you know, and and helmets can only do so much. You can get popped in the jaw with a punch or something and you get a concussion or anything like that. So, um, but yeah, it's pretty, hockey, I'm surprised they haven't gotten on this CTE train too much. Um, especially with football being, you know, being such the violent sport that it is. Hockey is just as violent, but it has, great speed and, precision, all that. So, um, so I wouldn't be surprised if we find out more hockey players do have CTE, but they did release that today that hockey legend Bobby Hull did have CTE, and I wouldn't be surprised if they do something, and then I wouldn't be surprised if hockey. And I'm sure the hockey equipment companies are trying to come up with something to make things better for hockey players, but there's even going to be freak accidents where you're going to hit your head on the ice, or you get elbowed and you hit the glass or something, or you go into the dasher boards on the bottom part of the boards. Those things happen as well. So I don't know if I don't know if they're going to do that, but um, um, so but at least we know what happened, and hopefully the research that they've done with Bobby Hull's brain can help somebody else out. So um, so um, we're going to get away from stories like that, stories that'll bring it down, and violence and all that. So you know bit of a sorbet here, especially if you're my Eagles, the reigning, defending Super Bowl champions. And I got something today. This may go on the wall behind me as long as I have this set up before Mike gets his own computer and he can do his show, join me from his home. I got this today. Got a Super Bowl champions towel. And on the back of it, it says Super Bowl 59 champion. So same thing, but just in two different colors. I think what I'm going to do is if I can get something I can stick this on there, because I'm not putting any nails in the wall. There's a few holes in that corner where Mike sits. Um, but that's something that's been there for about at least 8 years because I moved in here in 2017. But this is probably going to go. That's probably going to go behind me, just to remind you people that the Eagles are the reigning defending Super Bowl champions up until hopefully next February, and even beyond that. Um, but the NFL announced today that the salary cap will increase. So the NFL informed its teams that the per team salary cap for 2025 will be between 277.5 million and 281.5 million, with the final figure to be determined following further negotiations with the NFL Players Association. Um, Regardless of where it lands in that range, the salary cap will rise significantly for the second year in a row. Last year saw the largest cap increase of all time when it rose from 224.8 and 23 to 255.4. This year's increase means the cap will have increased by at least 53 million over the last 2 years. So the salary cap, how they determine it, it's calculated by annually. It's calculated annually based on a collectively bargained formula tied to league revenues, which have increased in recent years because of new media rights deals. But the reason for the number is not yet finalized is that the league and the NFLPA, as they do every year, are still working on adjustments to the number that formula determined. Um, Now, last year, for example, the formula dictated the cap should have been 265.4 million, 10 million higher than it eventually was. But as the league explained in its Wednesday memo to teams, it was reduced because the two parties agreed to add 1 million to the performance-based pay pool and make a smoothing adjustment of 9 million, whatever that means. Um, the NFLPA agreed to the smoothing adjustment because it didn't want a situation where 1 year's cap increase was massive and next year's was significantly less. So disproportionately benefiting the players who were getting new deals in the big increase year at the expense of players up for deals in future years. So that makes sense. Um, Now, the reason the cap figure has not been finalized yet this year, the league memo says, is because the NFLPA has yet to inform the league about how it wants to recoup that $9 million that was smoothed out over last year's cap. Per the 2024 agreement, the union has the right to recover up to 4.5 million of that $9 million deferral this year and the remainder next year. The league, however, is waiting to hear back from the NFLPA how much of that 4.5 million should be added to this year's cap, hence the range. Um, the league's memo to the team said it expects to conclude its negotiations with the NFLPA next week, at which time the cap will be finalized. The new league year and with the free agency opens at 4 p.m. on March 12th. The memo also says keep in mind that this range is subject to change based on further negotiations with the NFL Players Association. So we have an idea of what the salary cap is going to be. For some teams, it'll really help them, some it won't, but we'll see what it does. And, hopefully, and Howie Roseman of the Eagles GM, he's a master of using that salary cap. So, you could do a lot of things with that. So, um, but it'll be interesting to see because you obviously you can't sign everybody, but you want to get as many players as you can signed, especially after a memorable year like that one is. And And if you remember, last year the season started in Brazil for your Super Bowl 59 champion Eagles. Now, I don't know if you want to spend put a future wager right now, but the Los Angeles Chargers will host the second regular season game in Brazil, according to the NFL. Now, the Chargers, who last played internationally in 2018, will face a to be announced opponent in Sao Paulo on Friday, September 5th. I doubt it'll be a division game, but we'll see. Um, and that will be the day after the NFL season kicks off with your reigning defending champion Philadelphia Eagles in action. The game will be the Chargers' first national competition since hosting the Chiefs of Mexico City in 2019, where they lost 24-19. They also played two games at London's Wembley Stadium against the Titans in 2018 and one in 2008 against New Orleans. So it's been a while for them, and it's been sporadic, but they will be playing internationally. Chargers president A.G. Spano said, "It's an honor once again to represent the NFL on the international stage. It's also a tremendous opportunity to help grow the game and bring the Chargers brand to millions of sports fans across Brazil and Latin America." Um, Now, if you remember, the Eagles played that game, obviously, last year, and the game was overshadowed by poor field conditions. And this is definitely something that happens many times when you go from an American site to a a site that's in an international country, because you play in a soccer stadium. The way that they do the field is much different than what they do here. It's usually softer, and uh, it's also harder to get traction as many people are sliding around. Um, Even Jalen Hurt. Well, players struggled to find their footing throughout the game at Brazil's Arena Corinthians, normally a soccer stadium. Jalen Hurts said, "I mean, you saw out there, it was kind of a rough to get traction. Definitely challenging on that field. It's not the type of field we're used to playing on." And, the European fields and the soccer fields in South America, they're much different than what the NFL stadiums are like. So, but that will be um, the case. So we know one international game, and I think we know who the host teams are in London and Germany. NFL International Games 2025. Um, um, okay, they announced today. As I said, the Chargers will be in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Um, Pittsburgh will be playing in Dublin this year. They're the designated home team. Um, the LA Rams will be playing in Melbourne in 2026. Um, this year you have um, Jacksonville, Cleveland, and um, the New York Jets being home teams for the games in London, and Indianapolis will be playing in Berlin this year. Um, so the Brazil game will be week one. Um, I'm not sure when this game will be with Pittsburgh. Well, we'll find out in a little while. We'll find out when the schedule comes out in May. Um, yeah, because the game in Dublin, it says full matchup including opposition, date, and kickoff time will be announced when the schedule is revealed in the spring. Um, so, um, so yeah, it's going to be a interesting season, and even more international games, because eventually they're going to get to 18 games, even though we've said on the show within the last couple of weeks, none of the players wants an 18th game. But so so that is going to be it for tonight. I do appreciate Bank for joining me here tonight. I appreciate our spammer giving me something to do with banning somebody. And I appreciate everybody who's watching on YouTube on X as well. I'll be live tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Um, I have a decision to make with also eligible because I was going to focus on Bank. You're welcome. Um, the Saturday morning show also eligible. I have a decision. I appreciate that, Bank. I have to figure out what I'm going to do on Saturday because the one thing I said was last week, I was like, well, we're definitely going to look at Oaklawn. Well, with the winter weather the way it is, Oaklawn pushed everything back a day. So the Friday races are now going to run on Saturday. The Saturday card, which has the Rebel, um, whatever race is for the Kentucky Oaks and a whole bunch of other stakes races. That got moved to Sunday. So I'm debating if I want to do two shows this week or just delay to Sunday because I think handicapping Saturday for those Sunday races isn't going to be good. So a lot of things I got to consider between now and tomorrow night when I make my final decision. Uh, I may do two shows, who knows? But either way, keep track on X at Joe Quills. Everywhere's Joe Quills basically. So give me a follow and go from there. And follow me on Twitch as well. Trying to get to affiliate, and anything helps. So and also, why not follow me on Twitch because you'll find out if I'm running late or I'm delayed because of the Bleacher Brothers show. You can get that alert right away on your phone or whatever. So that is it for now. I do appreciate everybody for joining me tonight. A shorter show tonight, and we'll be live tomorrow. We'll get you ready for the weekend, and I'll see you in the winner's circle. So have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 9 o'clock.